Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Welcome back to the Purpose Focused Advisor. Rob Brown here, along with my co-host, Phil Calandra. And we're excited to have with us Freeman Linde, who is a new father. Just a few weeks ago, had his new son, Soren. Freeman, first and foremost, congratulations on that. That's a big deal.
Congratulations.
Yeah, appreciate it. And it's just been fun. And you guys talk about
one of the things that I really want to make sure that we talk about as we get this podcast started, this episode started, is Freeman's journey. It's unique because it wasn't that long ago, Freeman, that you had just under $10 million in an AUM. You were in a different BD setup with an insurance broker dealer, and you broke away and started your own RIA and are having great success in growing AUM, bringing in clients, and really having a good full pipeline of business. So talk a little bit about that transition and why you made the move that you did, and what is it about being an RIA that is so important to you?
Yeah. I started with a firm that immediately got bought out like a week after I joined it by a big Fortune 100 insurance company. And, so kind of grew up in that thing, didn't know what I didn't know, and just really struggled in that environment. I'm not a great prospector, right? I'm not great at walking out and walking up to people who don't want your help and asking if you can help them and getting rejected and then doing it again. I don't have the skin for it, I guess. Some people can do that and I can't. So I really struggled to get clients, really struggled to make ends meet with the very low, payouts that you get in there, right? Like I think our grid rate was like 40 or 50%. And then with the other fees that they tack on there in the broker dealer, you're really making about 30% of what the client's paying. And so just wasn't making much while still responsible for a whole bunch of expenses, current office expenses and all those kind of things. And then I think most importantly, right, like I joined because I wanted to do financial planning for people, like a lot of people, right? And then realized after the fact that this role entitled more sales and more selling of products than actually helping people with financial planning and advice. So I think I tried to do the best that I could in that, but I do feel like there's if you want to do business a certain way and you're not in the right environment, it can be a little bit like swimming upstream, right? You're trying to do it a certain way and they're trying to make you do it a different way. And so that was just struggle. And there wasn't anyone in town who was doing it the way that I wanted to do it and the way that I was hearing other people do it as I would listen to podcasts and read books and whatnot. And so if you can't find it, if you can't join it, then build it, right? And so I researched the idea of starting an RIA. I couldn't find anyone who had done it as small as I did, but I did the math and it seemed like it would work. And so we launched that so we could do it the way that we wanted to, the way that we felt like clients deserved to have it done. And it's been a tremendous success. And I'm just, because of that, I think really passionate about. I just saw so many other advisors that came in the same way that I did that either failed out of the business or still struggling and all of those. And so I think there's probably a lot of other people like me who came in a certain way and don't care for it. And so now I'm excited to just help other people reach that same freedom that I did and do it the way that they want to do it. And it's not as scary as people make it out to be, but and I think I'm hoping I'm proof of that and look forward to talking more about everything that you guys do and kind of that story more.
Yeah, and I should have said that in the beginning, because in addition to running his own RIA, Freeman also runs AccelRIA, which is a business that's designed to help other advisors who want to become RIAs do it using taking the path, using the tools that Freeman has developed in his career.
I am so excited because I can hear your excitement as you opened this up, Freeman. I have a similar journey. I started from the insurance space and had zero assets under management and started an RIA from scratch.
Cool.
This was 20 years ago. So I
Yeah.
appreciate so much what you're doing. And I think that the people that listen to our podcast, if they're what we call next gen, or if they're a younger advisor, um, that's something that a lot of them aren't hearing. They're not getting that. Our industry is very mature. Investment advisors in general are getting older, me and like myself and Rob. I'm going to keep going as long as I possibly can. But so often the next gen of advisors don't really have exposure. They don't know where their opportunities lie. So they go to the big wirehouse, they go to the insurance company BD. Similar to you, Freeman, they perhaps they get trapped. And when you get trapped, you really find yourself month after month, year after year, not fulfilling your purpose, not being as excited and as passionate. I'd like to hear that had to take a lot of guts. And you said it's not that hard. I say it's hard as hell. And it's intimidating, it's scary. And a lot of people listening to us right now that are thinking about it probably don't know where to turn to. They don't know how to do it. So they get trapped and they pass they lose the opportunity to really fulfill their purpose and their meaning. So can I share, two or three things when you were going through that thought process? How did you get to that point where you said, I'm just going to pull up on my bootstraps and I'm going to go? Because a lot of people need to hear that right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and just to clarify, right? It is still, yes, it is hard. It's not as hard as people think, and because I think some people think it's as hard as impossible. That's the level of how hard it is, and it's not that hard, right? It is possible,
Okay.
but it is hard. It is work. So I got challenged first one, and this is why I love podcasts like this, right? Like I think we all learn when we all come together, share stories, share ideas. I've listened to hundreds and hundreds of episodes of advisor podcasts. You don't always take something away, but every once in a while you hear that episode and something clicks, and
Yeah.
you just go from there, right? And so I was listening to a podcast, and they laid it out, and they just said, hey, what is your broker dealer doing for you? Right? So figure out what they're doing for you, and then calculate the exact dollar amount that your broker dealer is charging you to do that. Right? Not in percentages, not in grid rates, like of everything, of the top line that the client is actually paying, not just your grid payout, but everything that they're paying. What dollar amount is going to your broker dealer, and what dollar amount is going to you. And then after you know what you're paying your broker dealer and you know what they're doing for you, ask yourself, is that a good deal? Is the value you're providing for the fee they are charging you worth that? Right? It's no different than what we do for clients, right? The value that we provide to clients must be worth some multiple of the fee that we're charging. Is your broker dealer doing the same thing for you? And for a lot of people, and so I was challenged to do that. And so like any good financial advisor, right? I built a spreadsheet because that's what you got to do to figure these things out. And it was a big ugly spreadsheet, and I've since made a much easier to use and much better version of it. But it's a big spreadsheet that basically looked at, right, if we're charging the proverbial 1%, then the broker dealer's taking their grid rate out of that, but then they're also charging maybe some platform fees, some custody fees, some other things on top of that. So what is that top line amount? And then what is the amount that the broker dealer's taking with all those different levels of fees, and what am I getting? And I basically realized like they are not doing a lot for me for what we are paying. And if I'm able to launch my own RA, yes, it's going to add some additional expenses, some additional responsibilities, those kind of things. But many of those things then I realized are flat expenses that don't scale the same way that a broker dealer grid rate does. Right? Because if a broker dealer is charging you 40%, taking a 40% or 30% of the grid, and tacking on another 25 basis points of custody fees or whatever else, and they're charging that percentage, then no matter how much you scale, they're taking a larger and larger dollar amount for what they're doing, even if they're still doing the exact same thing for you, right? And so I realized like, hey, if I launch my own, I can replace a lot of this of what they're doing for flat fees, right? And so we talk about, hey, you want to create a fixed expense with climbing revenue, right? With growing revenue leads to these exponential profits. So I realized, like, hey, I can, instead of struggling to make ends meet, I can immediately increase my take-home pay by launching over, and I can free up a whole bunch of money that the broker dealer's taking and adding nothing back to me, and instead spend those on marketing, on coaching, on all these other things. And all of those things have helped me grow exponentially as well. And so it wasn't so much about just cutting expenses. It's, hey, we're going to have expenses in our business. How can we be more intentional about where that money's going and the value we're getting back from it? Because I've received way more value from the coaching that I've gotten, from the programs I've learned, from doing this, from the marketing I've done, than I ever got from the broker dealer, and freeing up that money allowed me to do all that.
Yeah.
So right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a really difficult conversation sometimes to have with somebody who's been with a broker dealer for a long period of time, because you get to know people, you're comfortable with them, you know they've had impact on your business in the good cases, and you have to say, well, how do I quantify that? Because it's not always no, it's not worth it answer. I actually am thinking about a client that I work with right now who is affiliated with a broker dealer, and because of some of the services that they are offered at the OSJ level, so really kind of the broker deal level down, it makes it worthwhile. It'd be very, very difficult to replace, but there aren't a lot of those out there. But it is a calculation, and it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses. And I really like the way that you said you made the decision to look at it in terms of dollars, not just percents, because percents can seem like cheap money. Oh, it's just 1%, or it's, the platform fee is only, 25 basis points. It's not that bad until you put it in dollar terms.
I think too, that's what allows you to do a better calculation, because, right. And again, yes, and absolutely, there are some broker dealers that do a lot for their people. Even like, I've got a lot of really good friends, a lot of really good people that work for Ed Jones, right? And Ed Jones pays a much smaller percentage than a lot of the people, but you when you work there, they just give you a bunch of clients, right? And an office and staff and all these things, and you can just step right in and do financial planning. And some people don't want to own a business. They don't want to do all this stuff. They don't. And so that's a great service. So that's worth it for a lot of people, right? But for me and for a lot of other people, I think that the broker dealer gives them nothing, right? They get no clients through the broker dealer. They get no marketing help. They get, all it is it just feels like handcuffs, right? The broker dealer, all the broker dealer tells them is what they can't do as far as marketing and all these things to cuff them with compliance, and does very little to show them what they can do. And by looking at it in a dollar amount, right, you might say, hey, wow, I had no idea, but my broker dealer is charging me $200,000 per year, right? And that's pretty normal. 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. Like, if you actually look at the math, depending on where people are at in their business, and you say, okay, yep, it's going to be more work to do all these things, but could I hire a really competent operations professional and do coaching and spend some money on marketing for less than $200,000 a year? Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Could you farm out some compliance help? Could you delegate to elevate? Could you do all these things with that additional money? And so I think that's always the first step for people, is just like, and again, you might do the math. You might decide, well, the value that my broker dealer is bringing me is worth this, because I'm going to be giving up all these things, right? I spoke to somebody who their broker dealer regularly connects them with, they own a bunch of 401ks. And so they're in there doing their education with those, and they regularly get tons of clients from these connections, and they would lose all that if they went off. Right. So that pipeline that they're getting from their broker dealer is maybe not worth it for them to go out. But I think it starts with knowing what your broker dealer is charging you, what are they offering in return, and then starting to dream, hey, is my broker dealer letting me do the business the way I want to? And if not, what could I do with this money instead that would maybe help my clients more in the way that I want to, and achieve my purpose in life?
Right. Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Freeman. And I think that a lot of advisors, no matter where they are in their own journey, they fail to recognize what's truly important to them. Because you're right in that some advisors maybe don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, as they call it. They don't have that burning desire, and they want to just be employed by a firm or a BD or even a large RIA for that matter. And then they quickly realize that they hadn't really, and Rob, I'll throw it to you with this because it's what we talk about with clients all the time. If you don't have your own dream big sequence, you don't have your own kind of vision for yourself, then I think, to your point, Freeman, a lot of advisors, regardless of age, they get trapped because they're not clear. Maybe they want to be an employee of Edward Jones for their entire career, and absolutely nothing wrong with that if they're not entrepreneurial engaged. But for a lot of people, they've never gone through that, right? Rob, you can talk about that more because you took me through that. What is the purpose? What is your dream? What is it you're trying to accomplish? A lot of people aren't doing that. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that, Phil, because just before you jumped in, Freeman actually mentioned the word dream. And I want to dig a little bit more into what Freeman's dream is, because obviously there was a very precise set of calculations that you did, Freeman, to make the move that you did in your own business. And that helped propel your decision to form your own RIA. But there must have been something else that you were really trying to accomplish with the type of business that you want to build, the type of clients or the way that you want to serve those clients. What's also kind of the purpose and the dream, the stuff you couldn't put on that sloppy Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like, my vision is to help 1,000 families optimize their money across their life, right? And you can't, like, so to do that, right, I got to have a team do that. I can't help serve 1,000 clients myself, right? And really help them make the most of their money, not just pile it all the way up until retirement and then die with a bunch of it, right? But to optimize it across their life at whatever stage they're in. And part of that means, to me, is like, I wanted to give good, true, comprehensive fiduciary advice. And right, comprehensive and fiduciary are words that are tossed out around a lot these days inside the industry. And some people think like, oh, fiduciary is just table stakes. It doesn't matter anymore. Everyone's a fiduciary. And I just couldn't disagree more. Most people call themselves one. I think we're going to disagree with a lot of them on whether they are or not. But to me, I couldn't do that. I couldn't really do what was in the best interest of my clients when I had sales quotas along the way, right? I couldn't really do what was in the best interest of my clients when my firm was telling me, this is how much you need to sell this. This is how you should be using this product. Do more of this. You're not hitting your numbers on these things. And like, that's just, I don't know how you do that in that environment, right? There's a lot of clients that don't do the tax things they should do, that don't actually get their estate plan done, right? How many times have you met with a client and said, yep, you need to get your will and your trust and all these things done, and they come back the next year and they still don't have them done. They come back the next year and they still don't have them done. And right, and so helping people, really making a difference in their lives, I mean, not only just giving them the advice that's in their best interest, but helping them execute that. And at the broker dealer, they would just shut down the ideas that I had. Hey, can we integrate taxes with our service? Nope. Can't do anything with taxes. You're not allowed to give tax advice. Can we integrate estate planning with what we're doing? Nope. Can't touch estate plan. You're not an attorney. Can I do a podcast or write a book so I can reach a broader audience? Not unless you sell X amount of permanent life insurance. Then you can submit your stuff to compliance and we'll think about it. And so there's the way that I wanted to help people, the way I wanted to get my message out. It was just entirely limited by what they allowed me to do. And, they cater towards the bigger producers, the people that are doing more. They don't want to spend a lot of compliance dollars and time on people who aren't selling a lot of product. And so I was pretty low on the totem pole as far as their priorities and letting me do stuff. So that was beyond just the money, right? That was more of the driver behind it. And the money helped, that allowed me to do these things, right? And actually make more doing it. But in particular, right, I'm not a prospecting guy, right? I don't like going out, like I said, asking people who don't want to be helped if I can help them. But I am a messaging guy, and I want to be found when people who are ready for help are looking for help, right? And so I like producing content. I like doing stuff with SEO, like systems, those types of things. And so I can create, if I'm free to do it the way I want to, I can create a system where when people are looking for help, they will find me instead of being forced to prospect and do things a certain way. So I think the freedom in how I serve my clients and the freedom in how I went about my business was as much of a motivator, if not more, than the money side of it.
So that leads me to a question. Were you an entrepreneur before you started your own business, or did you become an entrepreneur because you started your own business?
Well, I never started anything before. So I do have a business background, like business management was my major, and I was a manager at Target and McDonald's and stuff like that before that. So I think there's a little bit of that, management systems, those types of things in my past. But I think it probably was like a lot of entrepreneurs, right, where you see a need, you think you know how to solve it, no one else is doing it, and so you can't find it, build it, and then you just kind of develop into that. I think it seems like people who want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't have any ideas, they don't have a problem they're trying to solve, they don't, I don't know that they make them. I think that's how really good entrepreneurship starts, is seeing a problem, thinking you have a solution, and just having the guts to go test it and see if you're right or not.
Well, that's accurate in my opinion. I agree with you. Do you think that when you were in the BD space, the insurance BD space, did you get lost in trying to serve or be all things to all people? And the counter to that question is, I know in my own career over the number of years, the more I got very specific and worked with my ideal client that resonated, built the trust around commonalities, it just made a much more elegant practice. Was that your experience in the insurance BD? Did they not have a focus on, your ideal client and being that, kind of being that fit?
Yeah, I think they would have some coaching things here and there. They'd have a conference and someone would be talking about niching down and some of that kind of stuff. But right, all the weekly messaging was, all right, well, here's all the producers and their numbers for this week or month, and here's the top selling producers, and here's your leaderboards, and here's one opportunity to learn some strategic stuff about your business, and here's 10 opportunities to learn more about how to sell products. And so it was just, and I wanted to niche into retirees, pre-retire, 50 to 70, kind of that age range. Like, I mean, it's not a huge niche, right? There's millions of them.
It's broad.
But right, like when you are required to sell a certain amount of insurance, like older people typically don't need as much of it, and the younger people are the ones that need it, and so you end up having to just kind of take anyone who can fog a mirror, just to make ends meet and sell to whomever you can. And yeah, I did notice a big difference when I had the freedom to really do it the way that I want to and make my messaging around a certain, to cater towards a certain audience, that a lot of those people would come. And right, you might be turning away a ton of people that are not your audience that find you, but you're, I think, more sure to attract the few people that meet your audience that do find you. And they're viewing yours with messaging that's all about them, and they're viewing a bunch of other advisors' websites that are just generic. And I think most of the time they'll choose a specialist.
Yeah, that's good learning. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, because, and I wish advisors would understand this better, but there are more people out there who need the help of a Freeman type financial planner advisor than there are people like Freeman to do the work. So you are in a position to be able to choose the clients that you want to work with, that you feel that you can help the best. And it doesn't mean that you have to take everybody. It's, I can, even if it's 1,000 clients that you want to serve over time, it's just 1,000. As you said, there are millions of those, pre-retirees out there. So you have to take that into consideration when you're deciding who you want to work with and how you want to help them, and take the position, not of arrogance, but of, I have to protect my time just as much as as much as anybody else's time.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's not just protecting your time, it's protecting your sanity, because how many advisors are out there listening or not listening that have built their entire book of business, and they look back on it and they have vampire clients. They have, just suck all the blood out and life out of the enjoyment out of it. They have PETA clients. We all know what that stands for. And you turn around a decade or 2 decades later, and you really didn't build the dream business, and probably because you didn't think about what the dream business was on the front end. And I am critical of myself for that all the time. And what could I have done better in the beginning? And Freeman, you're doing a lot of those things. And I think that's so beneficial, because you turn around a decade, 2 decades later, like Rob and I have, and it's going to be based on the choices that we made, and the things that we did, the coaching that we did, the marketing that we did, the separation. I see some of your books there behind you, Morgan Housel, Nick Murray, the things that you either stand for something or you stand for nothing. And a lot of advisors are standing for nothing. And that's sad.
I think, isn't it Nick Murray that says, show me the clients you're turning away and I will show you the type of practice you're going to have.
Amen.
And so I think, yeah, like there's something unquantifiable about that as well. So like just before I went on paternity leave here, someone scheduled a meeting with me, right? Found me online, had done a bunch of research, and it was a doctor, and they just signed their big contract. They were getting a $120,000 signing bonus, and they were going to be making $600,000 a year this year, and up to $1 million in a couple of years, and had all these questions and all these different things, right? And so, like, for a lot of people, right, a doctor making half to $1 million a year is like a dream client. Like, they would love to have that. And there's just something about being able to say, hey, appreciate that you found me, but my specialty is in people who are about to retire, and so I'm not the best fit for you. And so let me pass you off to this other advisor that I know who's a better fit for you. They specialize in working with doctors, and so they're going to serve you better. And to be able to turn away business, which, back in the BD world, I never, like, it wouldn't have crossed my mind to be in a place
of course it would.
Have a doctor that's coming to you and say, no, thanks, doctor, I don't want to work with you. And there's something intangible about that. The confidence that it gives you to be able to turn away business because it doesn't fit your niche, and then like within the next couple of days, like 2 other people that are in my niche had scheduled new meetings to do it. I think it comes back around, right? And I would not have gotten to this place where I'm doing these things if it wasn't for the coaching that I've had with the people that I've talked to that kind of work through this with you and say, hey, yes, you've heard of these changes, you hear that this is best practice, you hear all these stories of people doing it and doing it right, but who's going to actually hold your feet to the fire and make sure you actually do it, right? Who's gonna make sure that you actually niche down and pass off some of the clients that are not a good fit and attract more that are. And I don't remember who said it right, but there's some phrase that you'll be the same person in 5 years that you are today, except for the books that you read and the people that you meet. And so reading good content, like working with good coaches, working with good advisors that can help you. If we don't do those things, we are going to have the same practice in 5 years that we have now. And if we're not happy with our practice, what are the things that we're going to add in there that will help us get to the one we need? And it's either going to be a person that you hire to help you, or it's going to be some books that you read. Hopefully you can do the same.
Yeah. And that quote I attribute to one of my mentors 25 years ago, Charlie Tremendous Jones. And he was an icon in the insurance sales space. If I may be mistaken, somebody can fact check me. Charlie Tremendous Jones made that statement.
Okay.
The other thing that I would add to it, I think a lot of people lack in the entrepreneurial space in general. They lack what I call entrepreneurial maturity. And that maturity comes from either the things that you can study, the things that you can read, the things that you gain from mentors and coaches, or the school of hard knocks. And you know what they say, experience is the best teacher. It's just too damn expensive. So, that's where somebody like AccelRIA or somebody that, can link, get linked into Freeman or to Rob or myself. I had a conversation with a young advisor out in Oregon State just yesterday, and I think he wanted to continue the conversation for 3 more hours because, right, experience is the best teacher. it's just so darn expensive. And that comes with maturity. When you figure that out, you can propel. It doesn't have to go as slow. You can accelerate certain things by doing that. And I think you're doing some of that, which is fantastic.
I've always been a fan of, right along those words, right? Like, experience is learning from your own mistakes, and wisdom is learning from the mistakes of others. And so why make all those mistakes, right? If someone else has already done it and can tell you how to avoid them, how to do it right, and save you tons of time and effort, right? Then get plugged in with a coach like you guys who have been doing it for years and have done this successfully with a number of people, right? You can either learn it all yourself and take years and years to do it and give up tons of effort and time and energy doing it, or get attached to someone who can short circuit all that and give you the shortcuts and help you get to the place where you need to go. And I think you'll get a lot further, a lot faster doing that.
That's absolutely right. Most listeners
learn more,
know.
Go to truestfancoaching.com.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's the shameless plug, but most people that listen to our podcast know. I mean, I was the pupil with Rob. I accredit a lot of my success and a lot of my trajectory to Truist Fan and to Rob and to the methodology. And there are others along the way, Nick Murray being one, Charlie Jones being one. So yeah, it's an important piece to this. And that's the great part about a strong industry like financial advisory is there are people, there are resources. If you're not searching for those resources, if you're not building your own kind of network or library or collaborative group, I think you're missing out. And now with podcasts, another way to get exposure. I think that's so important.
That question, of what kind of business and life do I really want, is something that you need to ask over and over again, because it changes, and as it changes, you want to make sure that trajectory that you're on is the right trajectory. Maybe it flattens out. Maybe it points higher depending on what you're going for. But if you don't stop to ask that question, I think you're making a huge mistake. But let's, as we begin to land the plane, I have a couple of more questions where we'll kind of do them a little bit more rapid fire, Freeman. You've talked about the success that you've had with your marketing, and people are calling you. As succinctly as you can, talk a little bit about what you're doing in content creation and SEO to really make that happen.
Yeah, so I think I'm no expert on SEO or all those things, right? I'm a financial
There are
planner.
no SEO experts, no matter what.
That's what I say.
Bingo.
And so, you can go find them, and you get. I'm sure you've gotten this. People reach out to you to say, "Hey, I can SEO your website and give you all these things." And you're like, "Yeah, but you can't do that in our industry, so no thanks." Right. So as far as what you can do in our industry, I think one thing that is important is that Google, which is where most people find stuff, right? When people are looking for an advisor, some people ask friends, and most people these days Google things. And Google abhors duplicate websites. And so if your website is a duplicate, given by some vendor that does a whole bunch of websites for advisors all over the country, right? So two things. One, if you are just a tiny little person inside of a mega corporation, right? You're at Northwestern Mutual and you've got your little page in Northwestern Mutual's Mongo site with their tens of thousands of advisors. No one's finding you. If you are a DBA of some bigger company that allow you to do your business as yourself, but your website is produced by some vendor and it's the exact same website with all the same internal content, it just has your coat of paint on it and your name on it, Google doesn't care for those websites. It knows it's the same website as thousands of other ones, and it will not feature those because it doesn't like reproduced content. And so having a website that is 100% unique, built from the ground, not copied and pasted from anything else, Google appreciates that more than the canned websites. And so again, going back to, if you work for a mega corporation where you're one page amongst tens of thousands, or you're hamstrung to have a website from a certain vendor, again, your broker dealer is not helping you; they are harming you in your marketing efforts. And so that's again one big way of big reason to start your own RIA or to be a part of one is the freedom to market the way you want and have the website that you want. And so having a unique website tied to a Google page that is completely up to date, so that when people search you, you appear in the search results and people at least give you a shot and click on your website, I think is number one. And then number two, having some kind of offering that is different than other people. For us, right, it's the fact that we do taxes, we do estate planning, and we're fee-only fiduciary. We do all that together. So there's no one else in town that does that. And so I think, there's just certain things that you can do with marketing when you're free to do whatever you want. You obviously still have some rules around compliance and whatnot. But yeah, we get, I would say 2 to 6 new people every month that just find us on the website and schedule a first meeting. And I think for the 4 years that I was part of Broker Dealers, I had 0 people, not a single person, found us on a website or scheduled. And so to me, that's just a remarkable difference in.
That's great. That's great.
That's great. Very practical and actionable advice if you're in a situation where you're able to do that. So let's do one more rapid fire. So I'm curious, Freeman, how does your RIA business and your AccelRIA, where you're helping other RIAs, how do you see that coming together over time? How do those work together?
Yep. So I think speaking of niches, right? So my niche for AccelRIA is financial advisors that work for insurance broker dealers, right? Because that's my story. So I don't know what it's like to come out of a wirehouse or a bank or any of these other kind of things, but I know that there's tons about, and so there's a whole bunch of financial advisors that are not my niche then, but then there's some that they just want help launching and they don't think they can. And so I'm hoping that my proof of me and my partner with $7 million split between us, launching an RIA and turning into a success, that there's no excuse for, well, I'm too small to be able to do this, right? Almost any advisor is big enough. And some people have the opposite problem where they're too big. Well, I have too many clients. I don't have time to do all this. Well, and you've got a lot more resources then to hire other people to help you make that transition, right? And so for me, it's just, I want to help people make that transition to do what I did as living proof of someone who did it and who's actively doing it, right? I think there's some I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, if you hire us, we'll schedule 20 appointments with verified leads on your calendar every week. And like, well, if you're so good at this, why don't you just schedule them on your own calendar and become an advisor and reap all those rewards, right? And so there's some level of I think you want to learn from people who are actually doing it, right? Like the fact that you guys are actually financial advisors or having financial advisors, you run successful practice, you've done all these things, lends a certain amount of credibility to you guys versus other people who've never been a financial advisor, right? The wholesaler that is going to teach you how to do things for your clients and they've never sat across from a client themselves. Like, why follow that advice? And so I'm just hoping that because I've done it, because it's been successful, that I can help people get over that hump and then go off and do it that way. And again, I have an abundance mentality. I think I want to help 1,000 people. That's nothing compared to how many people are out there, right? And so I can't help everyone alone. And so the more people that I can launch off to doing it the right way, that's just a big personal win for me as well. Just knowing that there's going to be other people out there doing it.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's just, you just see that it's like it's putting kind of an exponential equation on your ability to make a difference in the lives of lots and lots of people. But and anyway, there's just so much more I could ask, and we really do have to bring this to a close. But last thing, or second to last thing, if you had to name one challenge, one thing that you think could get in your way in growing your businesses, what is that right now?
Me, right? I'm the biggest challenge. Being diligent with my time, making the most of every opportunity because the days are short. Doing the things that only I can do and delegating the rest and helping other people, my staff and stuff, be able to become better than me at some of those other things that I should not be doing. And so that's why I have a coach, right? And to help me work through those things and help me become better. And I think for a lot of advisors, like we are the problem. We are the biggest obstacle to overcome, and working through those things is the biggest opportunity, I think, for growth and for living more life that we want to live. And everything else is just kind of secondary to that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That's a very honest response that probably most of us could answer the challenge question that way, but we aren't willing to often admit that we can be our own greatest obstacle. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then as we end here, Freeman, what's the best way for people to connect with you, whether they want to learn, more about your practice as an advisor, but also your practice in helping other RI or other advisors become RIAs?
Yep. Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It might take me a couple weeks to respond because I try not to waste time on LinkedIn. So I kind of batch that stuff, but so that's a good way. And then AccelRIA.com, we do have that spreadsheet that I mentioned is available for free to download on there, just for people to do the math, right? And maybe you don't do anything with that answer, but at least you have the answer of, what am I paying for? What am I getting in response? And then we are almost done with it. We're building a limited series podcast on launching your own RIA, kind of exploring all the pros and cons of it so that people can kind of see in a modern context, right? Not, man, Phil, I would love to talk with you more some other time about what it was like to launch an RIA 20 years ago, because it's nothing like it is now, right? And then the resources we have and whatnot. So how do you do this in a modern context? And what are the pros and cons? Just helping people, because I've had so many questions about it that I want to just be able to one-to-many answer a bunch of these in a way that I don't have time to do one-on-one. So just a couple of free resources for people just who maybe this is the first time they're ever hearing that a broker-dealer is maybe not the way. If you want to learn more, calculate for yourself, AccelRIA.com.
Yep. Well, appreciate that. And I would encourage folks who are interested to go there and check it out. Because I love the way you put the math to the question, because I can't tell you how many times I've done that math with other advisors and just help them discover, hey, we've got 400,000. I mean, I'm thinking about one client in particular. He had $400,000 going out to his BD. Was complaining a little bit about my fees. I was like, well, let's cover that up. Let's make that happen. And now, by making that decision to make that change, he unleashed that same kind of entrepreneurial spirit that you have, and his business that was, maybe worth a couple of $1 million when we first started working together is now worth $25 million. And it's crazy, and it's his own him along with his partner's asset, and it's an amazing thing to think about, and it's a question that doesn't get asked enough. But again, I could keep going forever. Freeman, I want you to get back to your family. I appreciate the fact that you said your biggest obstacle is you and how you're spending your time, and you took time away from your family after the birth of your son to spend time with us. We really do appreciate that. And to our audience, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. And don't forget, we're rooting for your success. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truestfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.